friends. This is Mike Dawson, and I welcome you to my Dreamers2Makers podcast, where I interview curious people that do extraordinary things. I am excited to present today's guest, drummer, producer, Brady Blade. He's best known for recording and performing with artists as varied as Emmy Lou Harris, Dave Matthews, Steve Earl, and Daniel Lanois. This is the first of 3 interviews that features the 3 men of the Blade musical family. While today's interview is with Brady Jr., upcoming Dreamers2Makers interviews will feature conversations with his brother, Brian Blade, and their father, Brady Blade Senior. It is not an understatement to say that the Brady family is a musical and artistic force on par with Bach or Gershwin. Today's podcast was recorded at Brady's family home in Shreveport, Louisiana. It was a great pleasure to reconnect with Brady and hearing lovely stories about his family and musical life. So listen and enjoy. Or a lot of it's a technical thing.
Sure.
And this is my second season doing this. So you do a first season.
Congratulations on the first.
And you try to look at what you did wrong and what you did right, because it's I'm not trained in this stuff. It's what's interesting to me.
Sure.
And so when I think about who's the wish list of people that I would want to talk to, mm-hmm. One of the reasons I wanted to chat with you is because your family has a legacy, and it sounds like that it certainly started with your family, and here we are in your home, and we're having a nice conversation
over coffee. It's the best place.
Yeah, absolutely. But what is it that made your home so open to exploration of your creativity? Is there something that you can point to that you and Brian had that could be something that's formative? Would it be a person, or is it just the vibe?
I think it's a situation that I'm going to have to use the present situation today regarding my parents, and then I'm going to go back to show you how it affected us. So you came in today, and you got to meet, 6 people from Stockholm, Sweden.
Right.
So we're here in Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, I called my parents last week. I was like, you know what? We're coming from Denver on the way to New Orleans. Want to see you. Oh, by the way, I've got a few friends with me.
A few friends.
Come one and come all. They have room here. So not only did we get here, show up and invade my parents' house, my sister-in-law, Laura, Brian's wife, brought over food for them for the week. Cook this unbelievable food so they have lunch and dinner. That shows the family dynamic of how they are. Now, when Brian and I were growing up, my dad is great, and he's loud. I mean, he's either playing music really loud or he's playing bass in the front room. There's records everywhere. That's how we grew up in our house. And later on in life, I asked my dad a question, and I guess I have to let you know the situation. So every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, basically, our house is full of kids. My brother would rehearse his jazz ensemble in the morning. I think at the time he must have been about, 8, 9, 10, something. His friends would come over. They'll play records or they'll play music in the front living room.
Sure.
They would, maybe leave about 3 or 4, and then my crew came over till 6 o'clock till at least midnight. Kids everywhere. And later on in life, I asked my father, he'd come home and say hello, everybody, and go back to his bedroom with his wife or wherever. They go out to dinner. And I asked him, I was like, why would you let us, all these people invade your house like this? It's like, well, it's a few things. It's like, I knew where you were.
Right.
I could monitor what you were doing. And then it's also you were working on something that you had interest in. It's like, so basically he was the best parent ever.
Right. It's Dad 101 in a template. If you could put it in a mold, that would be it.
Yeah, because you got to understand, we would go to some of our friends' houses. I remember it clearly, and we'd make a little bit of noise, and the mom would start complaining, or the dad, or they'd throw us out or something.
Right. Get out of here, kid.
That never happened at my house.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
So I think we're extremely fortunate to have cool parents way back then when we were kids, and cool parents now. They're 80 years old, for Christ's sake. Hell, my dad stayed up all night talking to the band. I went to sleep.
Right. You're running out of steam, and Dad's just getting started.
He's 80.
Right. That's fantastic. It's in the genes for sure.
It's crazy.
Sure.
And today this morning we got up at 5:00. We were working on a documentary on our father, and as we were standing on these railroad tracks in downtown Shreveport, where my dad used to roam as a boy, I'm looking at my dad, I'm looking at my brother, who, just literally got back from Japan with Chick Corea. And 2 months ago,
were they doing just an Asian tour, or was it part of the end or the beginning of something that's global with Chick?
I think they got a global footprint going on, but my brother's in so many projects, it makes my head spin, so I stop asking.
Right, because it's shorter one day. It's like you, man. You got a lot of fingers in the frying pan, so to speak.
I think it's life, and my dad's never said this, but for an 80-year-old dude to get up every day, his clock, because I'm sleeping downstairs, I can hear the alarm clock in his room. It's got this Bose speaker that comes on blasting like jazz or gospel, whatever. 5 a.m. He's
Love
up.
It. Yeah.
And he'll probably get home tonight about 10. He does this 7 days a week. So I hope that explains a little bit about dynamic.
I mean, because clearly, it was fostering creativity, but it sounds like the academics was front and center too.
Yes,
because he clearly, you and your father and his wife, your mother, they certainly look at it as, okay, you love music, go, but make sure that you don't lose sight of what's important,
exactly.
Academically, because you couldn't do the other things that you do without that grounding.
They stressed education. My mother was a retired teacher.
It's kindergarten, right?
Kindergarten, but she actually taught English grades K through 12, when she was in the school system, and then she retired.
Was that here in Shreveport?
Right here in Shreveport. And my dad has been a minister and a preacher my whole life. He's been at the same church, Zion Baptist Church, for 56 years now.
Okay.
Married to my mother for 55. He's probably the most consistent guy I know, and I don't know no one that's kept the same gig or the same job for that long. Do you?
No. The only thing you could think of is like people that like had factory jobs or something like that.
But not for 55 years.
Not in this day and age either.
No, it doesn't exist anymore.
No, it's all about if you have a job for a year, you're lucky. So so you're here in growing up, and the music is going crazy, and it's 24/7 music academy.
Yeah, basically.
So when you were in, like, say, high school, were you a part of any of the formal band stuff that we all kind of look at as kind of take for granted in the American school systems back then? Whereas now it's not so much. It's all about the STEM subjects, and the art has been thrown away. Yeah,
because of the funding problems they're having,
right.
I guess. I was fortunate enough to, 7th and 8th grade, I went to senior high school called Northwood. Would move to that part of town, met some new friends and stuff, and I was in the marching band, which was an interesting concept, learning snare and stuff, and
getting all your rudiments and all that stuff.
I was a bit of a
in the Louisiana heat.
Yeah, Louisiana heat. My brother's always been a nice, mild-mannered man. I've been a bit rowdy in my life, and when I was 12 and 13, I was extremely rowdy. However, I think I was in ROT. Yeah, I was in ROTC band. I got kicked out of that. My grades were good, but I had a discipline problem, apparently.
Welcome to the club.
So
right.
My Army career ended like quickly, and luckily enough,
lucky for the Army,
it's a guy named. It's an unbelievable sax player named Dorsey Sommerfeld. He's from here. He used to be in the Ray Charles Orchestra.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
He was going around recruiting some of musicians from all these junior high schools for a new prototype school called Caddo Parish Magdalen High School.
Okay.
All right. So
what year was this?
This is 1981.
Okay.
And then I actually got it. You had to have a certain GPA or something, and so I complied with that. And then Dorsey Sommerfeld basically changed my life and also my brother's life, specifically how it applied to me. We had a big band with some of the best musicians that I know. Dennis Montgomery, who's now who's on keys in the band. He's now one of the top guys over at Berklee School of Music. Has been for years. So it was basically a 16-piece band. We won competitions everywhere, and it gets better. So by the time I'm 15, Dorsey says, would you like to join my working band? I'm like, excuse me?
Right, sure.
So I was like playing gigs like Thursday, Friday, Saturday with like my teacher and like his cats in the Dorsey Sommerfeld and Polyphonics. I was a professional gig at 15.
Right.
So my father, to go back to that side, to add to the academia as a learning curve, at 15 he was getting busy, so he trained me to be a disc jockey on a gospel radio station from 3 to 6 drive time, Monday through Friday after school. All right. And then he was traveling a lot, and he couldn't be at this TV show called The Hallelujah Train. So twice a month, he taught me. I didn't realize this stuff till I got older. I was producing a TV show because of my dad's training. It was an entertainment show, 30 minutes, and I would read like kind of the news, and I would present the artists that were going to be in there. People like Al Green was on the show. So I was doing that all at 15.
Did you know Stan Lewis at that time, too?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
My dad was on Jewel Apollo Records. My dad was signed to, 1971. He did a record called Grandma's Hand that actually sold a lot. He and Stan were really dear friends.
Okay, yeah.
You know, his history of Shreveport.
So did Dorsey in that world with Mr. Lewis, was that part of that formative years?
You know,
I mean, it sounded like it was all like a lot of happy accidents.
A lot of happy accidents. But my dad was very strategic as far as the training. I didn't know it. He was just like, "Oh, go do this," and I'm
right.
Like, okay.
But he's back there, really thinking about it.
Yeah, crafting me, and I'm just kind of just going like an Easter bunny
you're a
or
teenager,
something.
right.
Yeah, I was a teenager. I was working at Wendy's, and I had like 4 jobs in high school.
Right.
And so it taught me a work ethic of how to work hard, but also, to get the job done properly.
Right. Food industry teaches you about respect for others, too.
Without a doubt.
No doubt.
I started cleaning floors. So I was doing all these things, and I finished school like when I was 16 or whatever. And
so was Dorsey kind of, and when you talk about Sommerfeld,
yeah.
was he teaching you like just how to hang in the band, or was he teaching you theory?
Man, Dorsey.
It was just all kind of rolled up into one.
Dorsey was my favorite teacher on the planet because he taught me not only about like reading the chart like Sandblaster at 200, but he taught me about life and what it's about and how to actually how to exist in a working
how to
band.
be a good human.
How to be a good human. But
Right.
then also, don't slack on the plan. It's like this is work. This is serious.
Yeah. It's all about the music.
Yeah. Dress sharp, because he always had suits on and stuff. So I mean, even though I was a punk rocker, it's like I respected what my boss was telling me to do and falling in line with that type of leadership.
Right. Did you happen to read that recent? Well, it's not that recent now. It was the biography on Charlie Parker that this guy did. It took him 15 years to write.
I have to buy this.
I'm trying to remember his name. I'm dropping the ball on it. But you were talking about the looking sharp stuff because when Parker was trying to break in, living in Kansas City, when the road bands would come through, whether it was Basie,
Mr. B,
or Calloway,
right.
They would all, they all had that ethic
Yeah.
about not only had you had to be the monster players to be in the band,
to be sharp,
but you had to look that part,
have some integrity about
so
yourself.
it sounds like that he was certainly a part of that school,
without a doubt.
And when I actually got to see Ray Charles in Detroit years ago. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I just completely changed my life.
Sure,
but. Who knows? Maybe he was in the band at that time. It was in the 60s.
But
what? Nonetheless, I remember how they looked, and it was just that vibe, and you just never recovered from that. So it sounds like you were on the inside of that mentality.
He taught us that
professionalism and that work ethic.
I mean, Ray Charles, came by the school when he was coming to here. He said, "I got a surprise for you kids today."
Are you kidding me? Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow. What did he talk about? Do you remember much of that about that?
It was quick, but it was intense, and it was great. and he heard us play one song, and he split, but he dug it.
But he did it. I mean, he made the effort.
Extraordinary. He was there. So Dorsey, for me, and definitely Brian, I think I can safely say that's what opened the door for me. Of course, you were influenced by what concerts you went to and things like that. That was a big impact. But the home life and also extending out as well to Dorsey as my teacher, those things were very important in our lives.
Sure. I mean, I think we're fortunate when we have mentors like that. So it sounds like your parents and guys like Sommerfeld and Mr. Lewis, Stan Lewis. Now he was the guy that ran the record shop, right? Here
Indeed,
in
he
Shreveport.
did. Yeah.
But Bell was telling me some stories that you could about the Louisiana Hayride.
Yeah.
And finding some old recordings and stuff like that. I mean, we're going off the rails here a little bit.
I like going off the rails.
This is a story that blows my mind. That what was found in this guy's house.
Yeah, they call me. It's like, Stan's ill, and they said, I want you guys to come by here and look at some of these old reel-to-reels. And we were going through stuff, reading the boxes, freaking out.
Just names on the tapes.
Dude, it was unbelievable.
Oh my God.
I mean, Bill and I were literally speechless, and we felt so privileged to be able to go by his personal house, looking at his personal stash of all these masters. You don't get access like that. And the good one. I mean, Stan passed away. Maggie Warwick, who was the heart of the Louisiana Hayride, she just passed away. My father performed at her memorial service, and all these great people from this area. It's a whole different, generation that's coming up now, because that's life. And I'm hoping that the legacy of Maggie is restored in a way where we can actually, see the catalog and see things and kind of maybe can be sold in a different way or marketed in a different way where it can expose kids to this hip part of Shreveport. Because that came from our town.
Right. Do you think that, when you knew that there was history.
Yeah.
And you knew that there was certainly a heritage. I think it's a better way to say it. There's a musical heritage. I mean, even if we just narrow it to this part of Louisiana, it sounds like Stan Lee had a huge impact because he ran so many different operations. But do you think it's going to be something that is going to require some huge amount of resources to restore all those tapes and get them digitized so that the world can hear it? Do you think that would be like, if you had a bucket list thing to do, would that be it?
As a bucket list thing, where I started off actually talking about this to Maggie and it's a few other stakeholders that are around, like Ken Shepard that was close to her, and my idea at the time. Because, you can have an idea. And for me, strategically was, Maggie, you really should talk to the Cracker Barrel Corporation, because not only will you have an outlet to be able to sell physical CDs and albums and memorabilia and things like this, but also the distribution of the stuff will be a good start. Financially, it will give you a foothold to be able to expand and have to do other things. Because in this day and time of quick mergers and quick fast deals, that wasn't a fast time, and I think you have some people that respect that thing of like actually going home and listening to a record and looking at the liner notes. You have a whole generation. I'm seeing my 14-year-old digging wax, vinyl, whatever, and like actually buying records. I was shocked that I didn't know she was into it. She's like, no. So I'm like, and she listens to pop and all this stuff, Spotify and all this stuff, but I'm finding a generation of kids getting bored with that whole format. These kids, these 20 years old in the house. And same thing, they want to press up mostly vinyl.
Right, they're discovering it. So when you think about a group of recordings that clearly have a historical relevance to us, do you think that could be done? And if so, who you were talking about certain corporate interests that might be willing to support that, just to make it possible for in the business side of taking those tapes and bringing them back to life. Do you think that there's probably dozens of examples that we can think about in regions of North America or Western Europe, or it's like Bela Bartok when he would travel and be a musicologist and he would just document things. Yeah. But there needs to be like a new guy or a new group of people that would take these recordings and then bring them back to life, even though it's a huge process.
You're stimulating something here because, it's a local great guitar player from here named Kenny Wayne Shepherd. You probably heard of him. And Paul Allen really loved Kenny Wayne Shepherd, to the point of, flying, they did things together. So say, for instance, you find someone else in Seattle or San Francisco or someone in New Orleans that has the resources to be able to do this. I think it would be so important. And to get somebody that can make some kind of Ken Burn type documentary, or Ken Burn himself do a documentary on, I mean, I think it should be preserved. And it's unfortunate that our state monies, talking about the budgets and stuff like this, they should allocate some kind of artistic fund for these type of situations like they do in Europe where I live. I mean, you have
1,000 years of heritage, they have a different perspective.
Big time.
For sure. I agree with you. I mean, I think about so many, little nuggets that are basically like time capsules.
Yeah.
And if we don't
preserve them, take care, they're going to be gone.
But if we don't step in now, it's going to be, you won't be able to bring them back to life.
It's going to be catastrophic. And so, I mean, you're actually stimulating me in a big way because it's incentivizing me to talk to a couple of people here locally that was close to Maggie. Saw one of them Sunday, ironically, and just to have a small discussion, because if there needs to be some kind of think tank group to get together to identify someone that could be the benefactor financially to help this happen, and somebody as a procurement director to actually run it and oversee it as a project manager, I think we'd have success because it's all here right now.
Right.
Down the line, I don't know.
Right. I mean, when you think about what happened, of course, you think about the natural disaster of Katrina and how much was lost because of that.
Yeah.
And you can think that there could be, all kinds of things that they're not even, because of natural disaster, just simply of negligence, that things will not be recaptured.
Stuff in all the stuff, I know people that was close to Fats Domino and Alan Tuesday, all these people, Alan Tuesday's house, all this historical stuff gone.
Right. It was history.
I showed you this picture.
Right.
Because I wish you would have been with me today. I just met this gentleman, and they're two older men that did really well in the tech field, I guess.
Okay.
Right? So the guy with the glasses on, we were sitting there talking about music history, and he used to go to these shows and with his sister, his older sister. Mm-hmm. She loved Elvis because Elvis started here, basically. He'd drive over from Tupelo for like $25 or something, play every weekend until he blew up. He told me some things I didn't know. He said Jerry Lee Lewis, wanted to really be on the Hayride, but they said, we if you want to be a star on the Grand Ole Opry or whatever it was, Louisiana Hayride, we'd like our singers to play guitar, not piano. You could be in the band and play piano. Right. And then Great Balls of Fire came out. They felt a bit stupid.
Right.
He also told me this one story. He said Johnny Cash was on stage, and then I guess Elvis walked to the side of the stage, and the girls went crazy. So the announcer guy came over and said, the crowd wants to see Elvis right now. Escorted Johnny Cash off. He said, you can finish your set after Elvis. And he did. Elvis did 30 songs. Dude, he told me all this today. The day I'm seeing you. So
that's fantastic.
I'm going to find this guy. It's my dear friend's father's friend.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to get some video of him telling these stories, and I'll send it to you.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Because he was sitting in the audience.
Right. Yeah.
So he's going to die at some point. I mean, he's an older guy. So
it's like this. It's like the StoryCorps stuff where they interview people so that they capture those oral histories. It's the same. It's kind of the same side.
Same thing.
And I think that's a real important thing. And I think you and I we're on the same page on this, where we have that sense of appreciation of history and also of a heritage that if it's not documented, then it's not going to be remembered.
100%.
Because, it's not like, Beethoven or Chopin, where the music was all scored and written out and we can remember it because at least there's probably some kind of a copy of it that we have a pretty good idea what it sounded like.
Sure.
But some of this music that's strictly an audio archive, if we weren't there at those gigs and we wouldn't have known what it sounds like, but now everything is recorded, because of our technology advances that, those things are finite in life, and I think that's going to be the challenge. Well,
you got me thinking now about that box. I'm looking at it as clear as day when Chris Bell and I were in Stan Lewis's house, looking through this gold mine of music.
Right. Can you remember some of the names that you saw on some of those tapes? Was it like a who's who of
music
history?
I could go up. The list is so long, I can't even go there.
Wow.
And
that's fantastic.
I mean, if you look at his publishing catalog that is registered, you see how many different people he had. I mean, it's incredible.
Wow, that's extraordinary. Well, it just proves that to me once again that the heritage of the music. Well, probably not. I won't even say music. We just should say art.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to limit it to the art form of performance and the art form of music. It's probably, well, I wouldn't say probably. It is beyond that. It's whether it's painters or people that are architects or whatever. And I think that architects, obviously, it's something that's a little bit more permanent. If a building is still there,
right.
It's definitely something that is going to be for people to look at. So that's such a wonderful thing. So the Hallelujah Train that your dad was a part of. Tell me a little bit more about that, because that's a fascinating story to me.
The Hallelujah Train started around that period when I was a teenager. My father was the host of a television show that he titled The Hallelujah Train, and it was a variety show, as I mentioned earlier, with different musical guests, and then he would basically tell local kind of stories, and there was some humor in there, and it was a very well-received show. And it was at a station called KLSA TV, because when I started doing it, it was still there. To move it forward, my brother went back to capture some of the same thing we're talking about now. My brother went by to get the tapes, my brother Brian. It's like some of the old tapes and that they would use, and basically they had gotten rid of everything. I haven't seen my kind, meek and mild brother angry very often in my life, but he was clearly upset about this.
So it was just thrown away.
Yeah, just discarded.
Not like erased and put the Price is Right's on the tapes
thrown
now.
away and burned. We couldn't find,
Wow.
and he did some intensive research to find if anybody so a few people had, strangely enough, had some VHS copies of it. So,
Right? Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
but that was about it. So this would actually spurn what's going on now. We're actually doing a Hallelujah Train documentary on Dad. And
so this is what you guys were working on today.
the main concert, which I'll send you some footage of, shot in black and white 35 mil at Duke University. We went to, I think, Brian, it's a band. In this particular band, in the footage, in the film, the band includes my father, obviously, and then it's got about 25-member choir, and so Rika Henderson, who's the choir director. But he's got Daniel Lanois on guitar, U2's producer. He's got Buddy Miller on baritone guitar, who is, and also coming to Shreveport in about a month to perform with that. But he's done Robert Plant, Spy Boy with when we were with Emmy Lou Harris,
Right.
Host of people. Greg Lease on pedal steel, who's in Clapton's band. Chris Thomas on bass. Aaron Embry on piano, who's now playing with some big acts. So it was this all-star crazy band led by my father. That is a Hallelujah Train. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's the best gig I've ever been to. My dad, the front man. You got punk rockers in the audience. You got country guys in there. You got old gospel people. I mean, the demographic was so I can't even speak it. I'm just looking at this crowd going nuts. Now, this band has played the Lincoln Center. We've done Fairfield University outside of New York City. We've done places in L.A. My dad was just on the Video Gaming Awards in Los Angeles in December. It's got over like almost 2 million hits on it, like the segment he did with Daniel Lanois, where Dan put the thing together, and my dad was featured, and Eula Gibson, who works at my mother at the daycare center.
Fantastic.
That is the Hallelujah Train. And the idea of this film of the Hallelujah Train is chronicle my father's life through song, whether it was his involvement with the civil rights movements in the 60s, his involvement with the Red Mass, which is a non-denominational thing because it's got Catholics, it's got Jewish people, everybody comes together
Right.
from a legal entity. I think it's May 3rd, they're doing it this year, May 4th, to have worship together. So he's always, went after this kind of thing. And also just a level of consistency. So the Hallelujah Train encompasses really Dad's ideal music and his life. And he does it very well.
That's extraordinary. So, how long are you guys going to be working on the document? Is this like open-ended because we don't know what the journey is? I mean, it sounds like this could be going on for a while because he's such a force of nature.
He's still kicking, exactly.
Yeah.
And my brother is like, some documentaries get made quickly. Some don't, like the NASA one you were telling me about. And but this one, my brother's very meticulous in taking his time, and you can't have too many heads too many cooks in the kitchen.
Right, you
so
got to have that vision, and it sounds like it's smart when you have a family member.
Yeah, Brian, what do you got? What do you want to do? And sometimes it takes him, in my opinion, a little longer to get some things done, but that's his business. I'll just follow orders. And so does my dad. For being the alpha dog that he is, he's like, Brian, what are we doing next? And then Brian will put it in motion in his own time. And it always works out. So we trust his guidance on this.
His instincts, for sure.
And it's going to come out the best that way. And I think they're doing a celebration on my dad's actual birthday, which is May 23rd next month. And he'll be 80. So Buddy Miller's flying in and somebody else. And then he's going to go up to St. Louis that weekend. He just wanted to be with his good friends, and he's preached in St. Louis. I'm actually going to try to fly from Europe and surprise him in St. Louis. Why not? And of course, we're having a good time hanging out. Love my pop, and I got to hang out with him as long as I can.
Yes, absolutely.
Nothing's infinite, but
absolutely.
But it's so much fun just to hang out. The case of what last night, the kids here staying at his house, and I hadn't lived in my parents' house in decades or whatever, so. They actually stayed home yesterday and wrote a song, and they recorded it here in the house. And then I heard Oscar before I fell asleep. It's like, oh, I wrote a song yesterday here in your house. And they said, let me hear it. And they put it on the big speakers, just like when we were kids.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I love it. I mean, because it sounds like it's just one of those, it's like it's coming full circle in a lot of ways. But, this, I can't wait to see the documentary. As an aside, I'm really wanting to watch the Aretha Franklin doc.
Man,
I have not seen it yet. It's just came out, but I am just like you were talking about. Who's in the audience watching the Hallelujah Train, and I'm just like, well, this reminds me just what I was just seeing when she was in Watts, and you're looking at who's in the audience there.
Yeah.
It's a demographic.
It's a demographic thing, and you can't explain it, and it's just and funny.
But anyway, I want to see that one. That's sick.
My father actually used to preach at her father's church, C.O. Franklin, in Detroit.
Okay.
And we went up there with my father when we were very young.
Now, is that church on Grand River Avenue?
I think it was, if I remember correctly. I mean, I was like 8 years old. My brother was 3.
Yeah.
The last time I went there.
Well, that's the city I saw Ray Charles in.
Oh, there
I
you
grew
go.
up there. Yeah. Fantastic.
Oh, you're a Detroiter?
Yeah, man.
My best friend's from Detroit, Bob Durham.
I'm a transplanted Yankee like everybody else.
I used to go hang out up there, and I'd go to Windsor, and I'd just walk across the bridge, my little passport.
Right. Can't do that now.
Yeah, they kind of should have. Did your mayor sail the bridge?
I'm sure he did 2 or 3 times, I think. Every time Detroit needed money, they needed to sell the bridge once more time.
Politicians.
Oh, my God. That's just fantastic. Well, I can't wait to learn more about it. And, I need to bring some friends of mine the next time the train cuts out.
You know what? May 23rd, which is a Thursday. Crazy that I know, but it's 6:00. If I tell my brother that you're coming with some friends, I'm sure they will accommodate you for my dad's birthday celebration. And they're doing the concert, and it's going to be full-blown tilt buggy.
That sounds wonderful.
And it gets better. They'll take you out to eat, too.
I'll tell you what, with that concert, I would take everybody out to eat for that one,
Should come over and check it out. If it's a 2-hour drive,
that's worth traveling across the solar system for that one. So, Brady, you're here in the United States for a few days, blowing and going. Mm-hmm. So tell me about what's going on this year with this group of musicians you brought with you.
The journey started with them, I guess last year. It's a thing called the Slush Music and Tech Conference in Helsinki, Finland. So the heads of this, and you got people from all over the world that's flying in. Business merger deals with entertainment companies, musicians. It's actually quite a great conference. But they asked me to run the musician jam part of. They want to have a big jam room where people just come and And I'm like, well, should I bring my band? It's like, no, we have a band here for you. I'm like, sure, okay. So I flew in literally the day I was supposed to do this thing.
Right.
Meet these guys. I'm like, can you play blah, blah, blah. Bass player killed it. We had so much fun. Big bands, about 9 of us, I think. Oscar Ogren and his manager were at the conference doing something as well. And he came into the jam part and sat in with us. And I had my neighbors, Jacob Hillner, who used to be Rammstein's producer, and his wife Lizzie we'd do some things. So they sat in, they did like this cool old Jamaican song with us, and then Oscar sat in on a soul song. Had a great time. I'm like, you live in Stockholm. Got his information. Didn't see him for like 9 months.
Right, exactly. As it goes.
Walked into a cafe in the center of Stockholm. Sitting there was the manager and Oscar. All right. You want to buy your cup? Sure. Sat down. What have you been up to? I've been following you on Facebook or whatever it is. And he said, we're playing a gig at this place next week. Can you come play some percussion with us and come to the gig? I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll be there. I think Oscar was 19 at the time. So go down and had a good time. And the third set that night, they had a song that stuck out in my mind. So after the show, I'm like, what was that first song of the third set? And they're like, something we're just working on. It's called Sober. So I'm like, I'm going to make a proposition to you. You find a studio. We'll do it in 4 hours. We either have something, or if we don't have anything, we don't work together. If we got something, we'll take it from there.
Right.
Went
Exactly.
in, they had a video guy there. We nailed the song out. Sounded cool. It's a great way to meet each other, to communicate musically.
Exactly.
And then that's when it developed. And Oscar's dad's a pretty savvy businessman. Mr. Lipsky, the manager's a smart guy, and they started putting together this plan. Now, that's where it gets interesting, because I was thinking we could just do the record in Stockholm. Great. No, they were adamant about coming to America. So we compromised. We did a portion of the record at a studio in Stockholm, and then I identified a U.S. city that would embrace their music. And I chose Denver, simply because Denver is now just like Seattle was in the early 90s before Soundgarden busted out. And
Right. It's kind of like an
Alice in
incubator.
Chains. Oh, dude, it's bubbling. 7 nights a week, you got 20-something years out at all these this energy is undeniable. And I've always loved Denver from a literary point of view, from Jack Kerouac to, the Beat Generation to, everything. So, and I thought it'd be a good town for those kids to actually make some music and have some fun.
There's snow. You're from Sweden, so everything
It worked out. Actually, we had a blizzard while we were there last week, funny enough. So we fly from Stockholm on to Denver, and we rented a car, and we actually accomplished everything we wanted to. We got DJ Williams from Carl Denson's band. Carl Denson's in the Stones, the sax player. So he's got this band, this kick butt guitar player, DJ Williams. So he came and sat in on 2 songs. And then we had great engineering team. And then they have gigs lined up here in Shreveport, one tomorrow night. They got one at the International Festival, which is unbelievable, in Lafayette, my favorite festival, I think. And then they got some Jazz Fest gigs, not at the Jazz Fest, but at Shaggy's Central City Barbecue. So no offense to the Jazz Fest, love Quint, great, but the Jazz Fest actually got too big for me. I played there last year and year before. It's just
Right. It's not really jazz much anymore either.
Yeah, it's not jazz, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's just turned into this huge commercial thing. And you know what? I ain't into it.
Victim of its own success.
Shaggy's got the best hang I've ever seen. Central City Barbecue is like, it's blockaded with these big train cars in this big, huge, middle of New Orleans place. And he just got the best crawfish. He's got 2 stages set up. That's how Jazz Fest started, really. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like that roots thing. And it's packed out, but not too packed out. And you get to actually have a good time. So they're actually playing there as well.
And people there, they hear the music, and it's not like a big outdoor thing where nobody's really listening to you.
No, they pay attention. And 2 of these kids in this 5-piece band never been to America before, so they're seeing it. I forgot to mention, we didn't fly from Denver to Shreveport. We actually drove. So we busted out through the mountains, hit New Mexico,
right?
Busted all the way across your great state of Texas. I love Texans. They love Texas. I'm like, where you from? Texas. They love Texas. I love Texas. Right. I like that. They're proud. So we got to see all of these things, and it actually made me realize why I love America, my home, by going on that journey with these kids.
Right.
It reintroduced me to that feeling of when I was that age and going out for the first time and traveling the world and with bright eyes.
Right. Because you get to see it through their experience.
It's unbelievable. And they were eating, and they noticed something about the South. It's like, my God, everybody's so nice down here. I'm like, you're going to find a lot of hospitality in the South. And that's what they're experiencing. And they just, they're like, well, we can stay at your parents' house. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And, my mom and dad treating them like they're their kids. They feed them, we're taking them to dinners, and they can't believe it.
My casa is your casa.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think us as Southerners, not to cover too many topics, I think that's a very big good point of us in life, with people around this world. That makes sense.
No, I mean, that's what we, when humans are at their best, it's hospitality, I mean, and but also, as you say, or as we were saying earlier, it's what made it possible for you and your brother to have the life you have now and enjoy is because of those formative years.
That's true.
And so now you're creating those experiences to a new generation of musicians.
I didn't think about that, but yes.
Yeah, I think it is. I've been an educator for most of my life, and I think if when we realize that we never stop being teachers.
Never.
Even if we don't have the classroom with the chalkboard, in the best of all circumstances, we should be teaching. And not only that, not holding secrets. If somebody wants to learn to play a lick, you just show them. If you want to show them how to do something, you do this and you do that, and boom, you got this cool thing out of it.
Right.
I think it's really important. I think probably as a producer, you probably encounter a lot of people that hold their secrets so close to each other. They have those walls in front of them, and they don't really have a good way to communicate because they're holding all their cards too close to their vest.
It's true. And producers, I tend to call myself a reducer because I'm just kind of like a fly on the wall, and I never personally try to insert myself into somebody's world. I just simply make suggestions on certain things, especially with arrangements to a song.
You're just listening.
And try to give the song the justice that it needs. Simple. So the song leads the way.
Right.
What's happening here is it's not rocket science. Mm-hmm. So,
do you think that there is a Louisiana sound?
Oh, without a doubt. But it's a Louisiana sound. It's just like it's food. It's like gumbo with a little bit of this in there, a little bit of that in there. And growing up here in Shreveport, you got everything from Dale Hawkins and what's the guy's name? Play with Elvis, the guitar player, James Burton.
Yeah.
I was in Elvis's band till he died in 1977, and then he was in Emmy Lou Harris's first band, after Graham Parsons died. The history of this place is crazy. The Gut Bucket Blues, the soul. My dad was telling me about like Club 66. Used to be on the Cooper Road, go see James Brown on a Saturday night. All these different things all in one spot. And that's what really, and then if you add in the element of the Cajuns and everything else that the state has to offer, you get a crazy, crazy, crazy eclectic sound that really shaped a lot of things in life.
Well, I think it's definitely something that I've noticed without a doubt is that the tentacles of New Orleans and Louisiana and maybe South Texas,
South Texas killer.
I think of guys like Gatemouth Brown or whatever. It's a tentacles that's kind of spread out through the world. Actually, it's a type of feel, and you can't always quantify it, because like you say, there's so many different musical personalities, artistic influences that you can't say that it's one thing. It's probably a million things.
Yeah.
And you think when you were young, you were aware of that, or is it something that's just the maturity of time that you actually recognize it for what it is? It's like we talk about the tapes in the guy's record store. It's something that only now you're really able to recognize it for what it is.
Yeah, because as a kid, I could only go with what I heard and how it made me feel.
Right.
Whether it was being in the studio with my dad in the early 70s and I'm sleeping in the drum booth, because I was in there all night and stuff. And the whole choir, Dad used to work everybody. And it was such an experience to be able to exemplify, have that music feel a certain way. And I learned at an early age, church music kind of made me feel one way, and see some other music and it made me feel kind of another way. So I'm had to come to the deduction that, if I put the feel from church into everything that I do, hopefully it'll make it sound better, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Not a religious thing, just a...
No. It's a way to make music foremost and forefront.
So I taught that. I was taught in the church dynamics, ensemble playing, listening to the singer, all these different things I learned in church for me.
Right, and probably those same elements allow you to work in the world as a creator of music and working with other musicians. It's just you don't have the sticks in your hands anymore.
It was one song they were doing, and it was kind of grooving on. They were doing like and I'm like, and it was kind of a group vocal background part. I'm like, you know what? You're gonna scare every kid in the in the world with this. Mm-hmm. Why don't you do this old church trick? Mm-hmm. And then recorded 3 times. All of a sudden, you got this warmth. You got the, so
Right.
small little things and details.
Right. The idea was there, but you just changed the vocalization.
That's it.
In that moment.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you a couple more things before we call it
Of course.
a wrap here. So,
I love talking to you, by the way, Mike. Thanks for...
this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We might have to do it again. And maybe we can sneak your brother in here one of these days.
Without a doubt.
future.
Matter of fact, if you stay in town later, you can see him later.
Yeah, sure. Hell yeah. The thing that I always, think about, we were talking earlier about how important it is to have a sense of history and heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that because our industry as musicians has changed dramatically in the 21st century, I don't even recognize it anymore. Do you think that the history is being lost to the new generation because they don't have the awareness of it? Not that they're not seeking it, but they just don't know it's there. I find that when I teach young children, and most of my teaching world is that I teach immigrants. I teach people from South Asia. I teach people from all over the world, and it's just it's the way it's happened. It's not that I chose that.
But that's fantastic.
But the thing is that they don't know about, and they're living in America. They are first generation immigrants, and they don't know about the music. I tell them about that New Orleans was the birthplace of a musical style.
Right.
Or I tell them that, oh, wow, when you were listening to that, that Bollywood song you just played for me, that was actually, the chords and the rhythm of that was actually a 50s rock tune.
There you go.
And they go, oh, because they heard the Hindi lyric, but I said, no, man, it's this thing, and they don't know.
The melody derives from
right, and so I'm always opening the doors to make them just to aware. I'm not trying to say you must know it this way because it's the only way. It's just like I just want you to know some of the background to it so that you understand why that music moves you and why you love it. But anyway, I guess my question is: do you think that sense of heritage and appreciation of something that happened in the past, do you think it's being lost? Overall, and I'm maybe trying to limit my remarks to just music. It's just like that there's a loss of historical narratives and a historical importance in how we need to remember our past so that we don't lose the lessons and don't repeat mistakes.
That's a very good point because when I talk to my own children, Ruby, Bonnie, or Levi, I kind of stress the importance of history and to go to what you're saying as far as the masses go. I think to a certain point, yes, it's something being lost there. But however, you can be greatly surprised, and because of technology, people can actually research things and get it a lot faster if they're halfway interested in it.
You have the resources to look at things in the speed of light.
One of the shocking parts I used to do these kind of international drum clinics sometimes for a company called Mapex, and I would go to Asia, and I remember being in Taipei, and they saying, "Oh, you speak." I just landed. You're speaking to a small group, and I was on the way to China after that. But I was like, "Okay, small group." So I walk into this, building. It was nice, and I'm seeing all this cool posters and stuff, which was like, "Wow, it's nice." I walk into this supposedly classroom. It was like 1,250 students in one class, because the scale of size and
right. Everything is magnified.
I'm like, so I had a translator and stuff, and to my surprise, I did my cool whatever the thing I do, but the thing that I was so surprised by, these kids had done the research on me and my city and knew about the Municipal Auditorium, knew that the expression Elvis has left the building derived from the Hearst Coliseum, which is on Green. They knew more about my hometown than kids that live down the street. Yeah. So you never, it's kind of strange, but, and the masses go, I think because of some of these, if I go to Spotify and I'm trying to find some, research on, or find some things on Charles Bradley, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to get his tracks and that's pretty much it. I'm not, so it's kind of a glance over kind of situation. And to be more specific, to answer your question, I think yes, it's changed. And yes, we're losing some historical parts because it's too much information coming in, and the brain can only process. So your brain can only process so much. I mean, and I think half the plan, I was talking to some doctors, like, I think everybody has ADHD. I'm like, yeah, it's probably just because of too much information going in their freaking heads, because nobody stops and smells the roses anymore, or have complete silence, or wow, let me go check my voicemail, make sure and see if I got any messages on my home phone. You don't do that anymore.
Nobody sits and read books, or even get, like you say, get the vinyl out and put the record on the turntable and read the liner notes without interruption, which you and I would do all the time.
It's a Swedish word called gubbe. So if you have any Swedes that listen to this, I'm an old man. I still like reading the physical paper. I still like picking up. I just got a new record yesterday from Micah Harold, great tattoo artist, great musician. Took his time and really put a lot of work into his vinyl. I was so impressed with it. I have it right there on the table. He gave it to me as a gift. So when I look at these kids I'm working with now and how their ideas of life say, oh, maybe go corporate or go back to college, because they're 2021, so you can make a good living. I might say, no, we're going to do music. We know what we're up against. Shitty as the business model is or not, we're still going to make some music. They have that. That's what actually drove me to work with them. They were that dedicated about it, and they didn't get this trip wasn't funded by some company. It's their money. They worked for it. Right. They created their own budget. And at first they had a very empirical sense of, like, basically Star Wars, the small guy going against the Death Star. I'm like, unfortunately, you're going to have to work with the Death Star at some point, but maybe you can do it.
Right. Exactly.
So it's an education thing. Again, it's like you do it, but you negotiate your deal where you have the upper hand and not them. And, so you can have some creative control over what you do. But unfortunately, with this business model we have, as erratic it is, we have to deal with these people sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It sounds like that, it's a never ending work. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So that we can help the younger musicians, the younger filmmakers, or even just young people in general, just to have an awareness of our mistakes, but also some of the triumphs.
Exactly.
So that we can say, we caused global warming. We're sorry about that. But we can also show you what we did wrong, so maybe you can help fix the problem.
Right.
And I think that the music industry is one of those things that's kind of in a same area of flux where we can't make any money from our recorded content anymore. Yeah. But we can certainly figure out ways so that the laws that are already in place, that they actually just get enforced. Because I think that's really where a lot of that comes from, is that we just have to have an accountability of what's already there. It's not we have to reinvent the wheel. No. I've run a publishing company for over 20 years, and I was like, the laws are there. What's happened? It's just that the big entities have just said that we're just going to create our own rules. We don't really care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, every songwriter's gone through their royalties, going from somewhere you can halfway make a living to wow, I can afford a taco dinner with this check.
Right, exactly. It's unbelievable, and I know that you've seen a lot of your friends that go through those transitions. Mm-hmm. So one last question, Brady. Yeah. So if you were to have a bucket list, what would be 2 or 3 more things that you would like to do before you have to kind of slow down like your dad?
It's a good question. I think the bucket list thing is really it's a personal thing. Just my kids, to make sure they have the tools that they need for me to live in life. One. Secondly, from a bigger scale, to be able to make some kind of footprint with kids like I'm working with now from Sweden. So I don't know if I will fall into an educational role to be able to help them, consultancy role, I have no idea, but I want to it's what makes me happy. And when I did the Asian circle thing, the 4 circles and how they intersect and what's important to you in life and what's not, and finding out who you are, that was one of the things that stood out. And you should always do what you love. You should always.
Right.
And the third thing, bucket list, go back to school. I only have a Bachelor of Science, and I actually want to get a master's and a PhD.
Is this the economics thing?
Yeah,
that you
and it's just a personal
do?
thing. It's just something I've always been interested in. I've always done, and sometimes in life, I've worked in economic development for a mayor, and I've applied my training, I guess. But for me, it's an educational model, so I guess that would be applied to more of an educational situation if I do complete that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a self thing.
Right. One of the things that I'm working on as a project is I'm working on funding something called a makerspace.
Makerspace.
So a makerspace is kind of part of what is known as the maker movement.
Okay.
So we're familiar with the word STEM.
Yeah.
And we're familiar with what the acronym STEAM means. So imagine that you have a projects-based learning facility with no grades, and all you do is make things. And it could be anything from the stuff that we used to do in shop class,
right,
or home ec class,
right,
or the new tools like 3D printers,
right,
robotics, Lego,
code writing,
all of that. It's all that, and filmmaking
in one shop.
In one shop. So
that's genius.
So the makerspace movement is a real thing. In fact,
I got to write this down.
Yeah, I'll tell you all about it.
Okay.
What I know about it, I'm learning too. But the thing about the makerspace movement, it's recognizing a need that is not being fulfilled through the traditional systems of education.
Yeah, because they cut the funding for everything.
Right, exactly. And so there's a lot of different business models with how makerspaces survive. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the things that I'm trying to think about. How do I create a way to take my knowledge as an educator and scale it so that I can, impact, instead of maybe a few hundred people, to impact many thousands of people. And during the Obama administration, there was a actual South by South lawn that was created and was done at the White House, where there was all these science projects from all over the world, and all these high school kids and junior high kids, and they had kind of like a convention at the White House, and he got to show all this cool stuff to the president and all the staff. And so out of that idea became something called the Nation of Makers. So Nation of Makers is a facilitator. So they basically create kind of like an archive of best practices. So if you want to do a makerspace in Shreveport, then they can look at what are the needs, and then how they might be able to help a group of people that want to do a makerspace in Shreveport, or in Cleveland, or in an indigent community in the Bronx, or the most wealthy community in Los Angeles, whatever that is. And this is not limited to the United States. It's a global thing.
It's a global initiative.
It's a very global thing. And there's hundreds of these makerspaces now. Libraries that never have libraries that never had a use for some of the rooms, they turn them into makerspaces. And some of it's just like, we have a few sewing machines. Great. Kids can learn how to sew.
Do they have a website?
Yeah, it sure is. I can show it to you once we're off line here.
Okay.
But the Nation of Makers, I was made aware of it because of a guy, Adam Savage, who was the Mythbuster.
Oh yeah, I love that show. I still look at the reruns all the time.
So he's on the board. And there's a number of guys that are a part of this, and some of them are MIT guys. They run, like the Fab Lab is a big. Some of it is government based. Some of it's through the junior colleges. So the Nation of Makers is kind of an organization that came out of the South by South lawn thing, and then Obama had a science fair at the White House every year.
Yeah.
Of course, it's
my
not.
Friend.
It's not around anymore.
No.
Hard to believe. Yeah. But during that time period, during that administration, it was a real thing.
Right.
And out of those science fairs became the Nation of Makers initiative. So anyway, long story made much shorter, that's what I'm interested in doing, as you say, to kind of pay it forward a little bit, because music making, I love it. I love to do it. It's one of those things that I always like to do, but you think about, as you get older, what can I really do to have a big impact?
I have to ask you this on record while we're going to go on your podcast. Can you pull me into this?
Sure.
Great.
Absolutely. No problem, man.
That's
we'll
record.
do it. The record. And Adam Savage, if you're listening, buddy, we need your help.
That's right.
Because you need to know Brady Blade and company here.
That's right.
Well, Brady, we could go on, man. And
Dude, I love talking. This is like the most fun I've had. I mean, I love this. We got to do this more often, like once a month or something.
Yeah. Well, you could do that, because you'd be the star power. Absolutely. Well, the way I've been doing it is like when I did a couple of the other ones for the film stuff.
The NASA film?
I would call my friend who used to work with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh.
And he's because he really has the knowledge to talk to filmmakers,
right?
And so I had him as a guest interviewer. And so the way I want to do my podcast is if I'm interviewing somebody that even though I have an interest, but maybe I don't have the knowledge, I'll have a guest interviewer.
Okay.
And that's a little bit different, and I'm going to see how it goes, because when I started this, it was like, oh, I want to be a podcast. Well, me and everybody wants to be a podcast producer, but I think, what am I bringing to the table so that I can have something that's interesting? So, well, get the professionals to interview other professionals.
Well, you have a great voice too, and you have a very soothing voice and an informative voice. It's just completely off the record and off the script probably, but you know how you remember things when you were a child and what made you calm or some great memory?
Right. Sure.
So, I go to a psychiatrist and all that kind of stuff, but you know what I would listen to at night sometimes now? Painting with Bob Ross. It's like my therapist.
Yeah.
Because of his voice. You got it just brings you right in.
Happy trees.
Yeah. Van Dyke Brown.
Right, exactly. Where's my sweater now and my fro? That's fantastic.
But my point is, you make me feel very comfortable, and you ask very, very interesting questions to make expand people's mind, my own mind. I'm hoping the listeners learn something too. But
yeah, well, I know that it's really important to pick people's brain, especially people that I admire and absolutely has an impact in my life. So Brady, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike.
All right, it's a wrap.
Woo! We did it.
It's so much fun to talk with Brady. Listening to him talk about his father, his brother Brian, it's no doubt that the interviews coming up with Brady Senior and Brian Blade are just going to be so much fun for you guys to listen to. My name is Mike Dawson. I am producer, music composer, truck driver, chief bottle washer, and host of Dreamers2Makers. Once again, I want to thank Brady Blade for being on my podcast today. All the music you hear today can be found at my band's website, roarelectra.com, or at roarelectra.bandcamp.com. You can find my Dreamers2Makers podcast anywhere podcasts are found, and at Dreamers2Makers home, which is assignmentuniverse.com. Stay tuned for more news about the podcast and these other projects. But for now, goodbye, old friends. See you next time on Dreamers2Makers.